Hey everyone, it's Phil Hall of West Fair Communications. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of the West Fair Video Conversations. I'm joined by Jerry Rollins. He is the author of a new book, Enforcer to Entrepreneur, Achieving Hockey Stick Growth in Life, Business, and Sports. And Jerry, thanks for joining us. Where does the hockey stick come into being an entrepreneur?
So a fairly unknown reference in business is hockey stick growth. As you can see, hockey sticks behind me. If you have them standing up, companies often experience slow growth, which is the blade. And then when they really take off, that's hockey stick growth is the reference. So it's interesting because in Southern California, where the people are more famous for being surfers than hockey players, I had to explain it at many of my business meetings.
Well, I believe that you have more than just the abstract concept of hockey sticks in your background. You want to tell our viewers about your background?
So, I grew up in an interesting family. In Canada, very limited population, as you know, is about the same as Southern California across the whole great country. And growing up, what I didn't know is my father played in the NHL. And what I didn't know, again, as a child, because he was just dad, is he was quite famous, since at the time in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, there were only 6 teams. And my father was one of the goaltenders during that era on one of the 6 teams, and one of the better goaltenders on one of the 6 teams. So, he won the Triple Crown, which is the Vezina, which is the best goaltender in the league, the Stanley Cup, which is, of course, the big trophy for winning the league. And he also won the Hart Trophy on a last place team and with only 12 wins. So I guess he was pretty good.
But you played hockey as well.
So growing up, I wasn't as interested in hockey, maybe because I grew up in it, but through happenstance, I ended up leaving high school at the bequest of my principal and my mother and my uncle that I'm named after. I was kind of a challenged kid, let's just say that. I liked to go to work as compared to go to school. So after skipping 100 days of school, I got offered 3 options, and I was a pretty good athlete, across most sports. So I played everything, but I wasn't the best. So I played hockey, baseball, rugby, soccer, volleyball, you name it, I played it. But I was offered an opportunity at 17 to go 3 provinces away and play major junior hockey on a 10-game tryout, and made the team in my first game.
Nice.
So.
How long were you a professional athlete?
So I played professional hockey for 4 years. It was during a time when the business of hockey was not a good business. So many NHL, there were 2 leagues at the time. The good news is the 2 leagues increased the opportunity for financial reward in hockey. So, in the mid 70s, I signed my first contract. My signing bonus was $50,000, and my contract was, I think, 50, 60, 70 were my first 3 years of salary. So back in the 70s, I think that was quite good money. And relating it to my father's days, when he was a great player, I was an average player. His biggest year after winning the MVP was 15,000. So hockey, though, was going through tough economic times. There were no salary caps, 2 leagues bidding on players, and to own a team, you had to pretend to have money. So I signed 3 3-year contracts in my 4-year professional career. So almost every team I played for or was signed by went out of business. So if I'd known more about business, I would have actually asked for a balance sheet of the owner prior to signing a guaranteed contract, to find out, 4 or 5 months later, it was not worth the paper it was written on.
Well, I can commiserate with that because I work in the media industry, and the last 4 or 5 companies that I've worked for all went out of business as well. So it's a weird feeling, because when I had applied for a job, somebody had asked me, who can I speak to at your previous employer? And I said, that's going to be a little difficult because they don't exist anymore.
Yeah. Well, it again, when the two leagues merged, they put some financial rules in place. They put in salary caps over the last number of years. So it's a very stable sport now economically. The teams make money. The players, of course, make a lot of money. You know, rolling it forward to today, somebody that was a draft choice like me that made the big leagues in the first year would make 700,000 to 800,000 a year. So I was just born 40 years too early.
I've heard a lot of talk from a lot of business experts over the years about the importance of teamwork in a business setting. Obviously, teamwork needs to work in hockey or other professional sports, or else you're not going to be getting anywhere. But it doesn't always work in an office setting. From your experience, how can you take so many disparate personalities within an office setting and make them into a cohesive team?
First of all, and it's a very relevant point because some of the best teams I played on didn't have any great players. And some of the worst teams I played on had future Hall of Famers. So it's not always, it relates to the business owner having a plan, number one. So the plan should be developed by the whole team, not just by the owner. It shouldn't be handed down. A business plan starts from the back door of a business and ends at the front door. But everybody should have input. And I know that sounds kind of democratic, and it is. It's meant to, I always was very inclusive in writing business plans. And I think companies, even Fortune 500 companies that have a board of directors that sit down with 5 or 10 of the top people and write a business plan, I think it's sometimes not going to get the best results because the team isn't involved in it. So having a plan, and then I think a great owner or coach drafts a team looking at who they want on the team. And I look at a business team just like a sports team. You know, there's all this talk about A, B, and C players. You know, you've got to have some A players on a team. You've got to have a lot of really good Bs and as few C's as possible. And I'm not referring to C's that they're not as smart as the rest of the people. C's sometimes just, they go through life hating where they work and what they do at every company. And if you can avoid hiring as many people as those, because C's also tend, I'll remember my first job. It was a great company. It was a small company, but a great company with great role models. The owner was a brilliant businessman. The leadership was all A players. And I remember getting a job there, and there were 5 great salespeople on the team and one that never sold anything. Guess who wanted to go to lunch with me every day? We'll call that person X. Every day they wanted to go take me to lunch and make sure that I failed. So there was comfort in failure. Now, X didn't last a long time after I started, and X hated his current job, hated his next job, hated every job he ever had because I kept track of him through the years, and tended to just wander through life thinking it was everybody else but himself that was the challenge. So putting together great teams is blending personalities, having a great coach, and a coach is a good teacher, not a good, not someone who gives orders well, but somebody who's a good teacher who understands the personalities on the team.
What happens though if you're in a situation where the business owner is either oblivious of the chaos going on in the company, or when confronted with the fact that we have not only C players but D players, won't do anything about it and allows the company to fray?
So I've faced that situation multiple times in my life. And as I was a hired gun for equity throughout much of my career, and I was brought into companies that were typically stalled, that wanted to grow, and I was a growth guy. So I had a reputation for growing companies and building great teams. So the first thing you have to do, and you have to determine whether that person at the top really wants it to happen. So if they didn't, I didn't take the opportunity. If the owner was not coachable, I didn't take the opportunity. To this day, I work with a lot of CEOs, And the first thing in the interview is if they're not coachable, if they're the smartest person in every room, the rule is they're probably not.
Uh-huh.
And digressing on a little story, one person came to me once and said, you know, I'm brilliant at what I do. I'm a great businessman. I've been parked at this revenue for many years, but every time I hire an A player, they leave me, and they leave within weeks. And I went, oh, that's interesting. And getting to know this person over a couple months, we never had a business relationship because A players don't work for C's.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's hard if you join a company and you really are an A player and you look at the person you're working for, or the owner of the company, and you think they're a total knucklehead, and other A players agree with that, most of you will leave that organization and go to a company that really is more like you. And, you know, good people attract good people,
Uh-huh.
vice versa.
Well, your book is called Enforcer to Entrepreneur. Are you suggesting that the entrepreneur life is the best course for the business professional?
No, I'm not. So I was a reluctant entrepreneur, and the enforcer part came about because on my first shift in my first junior game, I was given a 10-game tryout, and the big guy came behind the net, and I was used to my local community where when somebody ran into me, they fell down and didn't get back up. Well, this big guy was a man. He was a 20-year-old man, outweighed me by 30, 40 pounds, and ran into me. He fell down. He got up. We had a fight. On the way to the bench, we had another fight, and then we got thrown out of the game. At the end of that period, the coach came in the room, and the players were looking at me strange, and the coach said, "Kid, you've got a job." And I went, "I've got 9 more go." And what I learned is that person not only was the toughest guy in the league, but he's also been voted one of the toughest 5 players ever in hockey. After his Hall of Fame hockey career, his name was Clark Gillies. And if I'd known how tough he was, I wouldn't. But the entrepreneur part, I was a security-oriented person who took a job looking for stability. And I went into sales, and I wanted to be able to control my destiny. So I went into sales. If my company hadn't sold, I would probably still be there today. So I went from entry-level sales to sales manager to general sales manager. The company sold, and a big public company offered me a senior leadership position. And I just didn't fit, because what I learned during my prior 9 years, I didn't take orders well.
Mhm.
If somebody included me, was inclusive in asking my opinion and listening and then telling me what we were going to do, I was fine with implementing their programs. But when a directive came from another city that I thought didn't make sense, wasn't really right, meaning didn't fit my moral compass, I couldn't do it. So I became an entrepreneur by getting an equity position in a small business where it was totally an upside opportunity. So I was a reluctant, but I was not unlike the original founders where they gambled everything. All I had to put in was my time for my equity. And my time was valuable because I was making a lot of money, but I gambled my time and compensation for equity. And, you know, 3 companies later, I did it, you know, 3 or 4 more times. Since then, I've started a couple of my own companies. But I don't want anybody to think I'm this Bill Gates or anybody, because I'm a regular guy who backed into it, opportunities.
Jerry, how do you define success?
Um, it's been a different thing. So how I defined success when I was 20 years old and signed my first contract and went, I'm going to be a millionaire by 25, it was money. And it was probably money still in my 30s. But how I defined my success after and would have redefined it is significance is success to me today. So if you become significant to people around you, to your community, to your the people you mentor, to kids you know, you become a role model or an example. To me, if you're a good parent and raise great kids, that's significance. So you don't have to become a millionaire to become significant. So I put success before significance, but I started recognizing throughout my business career that the people I admired had significance in the number one spot before the success, and they achieved great success.
During the past several months, the United States and the world actually has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Great many businesses have gone under or they're struggling to stay afloat, but yet at the same time, I'm also seeing a lot of people starting up businesses, and I'm seeing a lot of existing businesses that were somewhat under the radar before, now suddenly coming to the forefront, Zoom being the most obvious example. How is it that some companies, when faced with a crisis like we're undergoing, basically give up the ghost while others suddenly go on to greater glory?
Yeah. So my observations through this, but this is an observation built through, I'm 65, so I've gone through cycles like this, but quite unlike this many times before. So the dot-com bust in 2000, 2001, 2008, I've lived through those times. And so I'm not going to speak to today. My observations today about the businesses that have succeeded is they have pivoted quickly. But all of them, and when I went through those challenges in 2000, 2001, 2008, I pivoted quicker than any of my competitors or people in business, and actually had bigger growth during those years than I ever had during the good years. Being good during good times is, your boat floating with the tide. Being good during tough times shows you're really good, you're tough enough to face, tough times and pivot and come out of it doing better. So all of the companies I've observed that have done well, they pivoted immediately. When this all hit in March, they had a plan B. They acted on it immediately. They didn't go, oh, this will end in 30 days. They went, this could last for a long time. If it changes, I'll go back to plan A, but I'm on plan B. I have a plan C. And that's a lot of what I do with people, is put brilliant minds together to help each other through those times. Because there are industries and businesses that have just gone away. You can't pivot if you don't have any revenue. But if you had cash, when the challenge came, sitting in the bank on the sidelines, you had the land or the landscape or the runway to pivot and have time to make the adjustment. So great companies always have cash reserves.
I'm thinking about a lot of younger people who are coming of age in 2008 when we had the financial meltdown, and coming of age now when we have the pandemic and the economic tumult that goes with it. Do you think that these young people coming out of these back-to-back crises are going to be stronger entrepreneurs than the entrepreneurs who came to the forefront in the years prior to these back-to-back crises?
That's a good question. So, if we categorize people and start throwing them into boxes like millennials or baby boomers, I think those terms are all mislabeling people. I know millennials that are mentally baby boomers and vice versa. I know spoiled brats who are baby boomers. So I don't think it has to do with age. I think it has to do with upbringing, values. I am very impressed with many of the young entrepreneurs I know and how ready they were to change. But I will also tell you that I've noticed many of them driven by significance as their guiding value from day one. When they founded their business, they went, I don't want to get married and have a divorce like my, fill in the blank. I want to, when I get married to the right person, and if I have children, then maybe I'll think about buying a house. Until then, I might not own a car. I might not own a home. I might have investments, and I might be in 3 or 4 businesses as compared to one company. So my generation tended to go in and go all in on one company. What I have noticed about my 30-something friends is they might have 2 or 3 businesses. I know many of them that they'll start a business, get it going, hire somebody, give them some benefit to running it, whether it be equity or phantom equity or profit share. Then they go on and start another one, and they manage their portfolio of companies. So I have many young friends who are doing that. So they're diversifying or spreading their risk as compared to my generation, who, if you didn't go work to work 80 hours at one job, you just weren't working.
Well, Jerry, we've come to the end of our conversation, but if the listeners wanted to continue the conversation with you directly, how can they get in touch with you?
So my website is www.jerryrollins.com. So jerryrollins.com. They can buy my book there. They can get free downloads of a lot of, I'm much like Marshall Goldsmith, although I make about $27,000 a day less than him, but he's one of my heroes. And he has all of his information posted on his website so people can download it. I have the same. So there's data and information downloads there that anybody can go and get. My book is available in ebook for a discounted price through the end of this month when it goes up to its full price, and paper and hardback and audio become available at that time.
Excellent. Jerry Rollins is the author of Enforcer to Entrepreneur, Achieving Hockey Stick Growth in Life, Business, and Sports. Jerry, thank you so much for being with us. And folks, we'll be back again next week. I hope to see you then. Until then, have a blessed day.